Hey there, my outer left CV joint is making noise. And in this video, I'll be replacing it. I chose an inexpensive Chinese alternative as the new joint and will be attempting to replace it on my Audi A6 C5. First, I placed supports under the rear wheels, engaged first gear, and only then loosened the hub bolt with a 27mm socket. The bolt is tightly secured, so I use an additional lever, such as a larger diameter pipe, to loosen the hub bolt without any issues. Next, I loosen the wheel bolts, jack up the car, and remove the wheel. Now, we need to remove the CV joint. To do this, we unscrew the hub bolt, turn the steering wheel, and try to remove the joint. If it doesn't come out, we can loosen one of the lower arms or two upper arms in the steering knuckle. I'll now explain how I was able to remove the CV joint without loosening any arms. I took a more reliable support and placed it under the car to prevent it from falling. Then I turned the steering wheel in the opposite direction. For example, if I'm replacing the CV joint on the left side, I turn the wheel all the way to the right. After that, I placed a jack under the lower suspension arms and raised them until they were parallel to the ground. As you can see, the lower suspension arms are almost parallel to the ground, but they were slightly lower before. The reason for this is that when the arms became parallel to the ground, the steering knuckle moved slightly further away from the gearbox. This small distance allowed us to pull the drive shaft with the CV joint outwards. In the final step, we need to remove the CV joint from the drive shaft. To do this, we cut off the clamps and screw in the hub bolt that we unscrewed earlier. By turning the hub bolt, we can pull the CV joint off the retaining ring of the drive shaft. I felt a characteristic click, which means the CV joint has come loose, and I continue to turn the bolt until the joint is removed. I removed the CV joint. As you can see, it's not difficult if the retaining ring isn't in the way. You can do it with just a bolt. Now we need to clean everything of the old grease, remove the washers and the retaining ring, and put on the new parts. Let's take a closer look at what's on the shaft. As you can see, there's a retaining ring in a special groove that prevented the joint from being removed. Next, there are two washers, one plastic and one metal, which acts as a thrust bearing. Then I take the new parts from the kit I bought and put them on the shaft. But first, we put on the new CV joint boot. Once the new CV joint boot is on, we can put on the metal washer, then the plastic one in the same order they were in before. I didn't like the new retaining ring because it wobbled too much on the shaft, and there was a good chance that it would make it difficult to remove the CV joint in the future. So I decided to put the old one back. Next, we take the new CV joint, screw in the bolt to keep the grease from leaking out, and pack it with new grease. We squeezed some of the grease into the joint and applied some on the axle shaft. Now we put on the new CV joint using a wooden block and tap it with a hammer onto the hub bolt until it sits on the retaining ring. The CV joint fit perfectly for me, and I hammered it until it hit the plastic ring. You can check this through the CV joint boot. Next, we clean the joint housing of the grease and put on the boot, tightening it with the special clamps. To tighten the clamps, I used these pliers, but I couldn't tighten the last small clamp, so I used a screw clamp instead. Finally, we loosened the hub bolt and put the CV joint back into the steering knuckle. Once I put the CV joint back, we can remove the jack that was placed under the lower suspension arms. Next, we put on the wheel and tighten the hub bolt with the car on the ground. Finally, we take a test drive and make sure the new joint is working properly. I hope this was easy to understand, and if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.